The Philippine Independent Church is an independent Christian denomination in the form of a national church in the Philippines. Its schism from the Catholic Church was proclaimed in 1902 by the members of the Unión Obrera Democrática Filipina due to the alleged mistreatment of the Filipinos by Spanish priests and the execution of José Rizal during Spanish colonial rule. Isabelo de los Reyes was one of the initiators of the separation, and suggested that former Catholic priest Gregorio Aglipay be the head of the church. It is also known as the Aglipayan Church, after its first supreme bishop, Gregorio Aglipay, who also later became a Freemason in May 1918. Pope Leo XIII instructed the Archbishop of Manila, Bernardino Nazalde y Villa, to excommunicate those who initiated the schism. Since 1960, the Church has been in full communion with the Episcopal Church in the United States, and through it, the entire Anglican Communion. Commonly held beliefs in the Aglipayan Church are the rejection of the exclusivity right to apostolic succession by the Petrine papacy, the acceptance of priestly ordination of women, the free option of clerical celibacy, the tolerance to join Freemasonry groups, non-committal in belief regarding transubstantiation and real presence of Christ in the Eucharist, and the advocacy of contraception and same-sex civil rights among its members. Many saints canonized by Rome after the 1902 schism are not recognized by the Aglipayan Church and its members. As of 2015, the Supreme Bishop was Ephraim Fahutagana, whose central office is located at the National Cathedral of the Holy Child in Ermita, Manila. Name: the church's official name is Iglesia Filipina Independiente, or, in English, the Philippine Independent Church. The church or its members are referred to by the acronym IFI as well as by a variety of names in the various languages of the Philippines, such as Ilocano, Silwayan Simbahan T Filipinas, Tagalog, Malayang Simbahan ng Pilipinas, and Karay at Simbahan Hilway na Pilipinian. History: Philippine Revolution and Gregorio Aglipay. Gregorio Aglipay was an activist and a Roman Catholic priest from Ilocos Norte who would later be excommunicated by then Archbishop of Manila Bernardino Nazalde y Villa for fomenting schism with the Pope. During the Philippine Revolution, Isabelo de los Reyes and Aglipay acted to reform the Filipino Catholic clergy. Aglipay was the convener of the Filipino Ecclesiastical Council, in response to Mabini's manifesto urging the Filipino clergy to organize a Filipino national church. He was a member of the Malolos Congress, the lone member coming from the religious sector, although he also represented Ilocos Norte. He was a guerrilla leader of Ilocos Norte during the Philippine-American War with the rank of lieutenant general. Following the Philippine-American War, Aglipay and de los Reyes founded the Philippine Independent Church in 1902. The new church rejected the spiritual authority of the Pope and abolished the celibacy requirement for priests, allowing them to marry. At the time, all of its clergy were former Catholic priests. Aglipay drew upon the Masons for some concepts of theology in worship. He was supported by Miguel Moreta, the Grand Master of the Spanish Orient Lodge of Freemasonry in Madrid. Aglipay became a Mason in 1918. The historian John N. Schumacher contends that Moreta and other non-Filipino laymen pushed Aglipay towards schism with the Catholic Church because of the resentment of the activities of Catholic religious orders in the Philippines rather than Filipino nationalism. The new Philippine Independent Church reformed the Latin Tridentine Liturgy, adopting the vernacular in worship, and modeling its liturgy on the Anglican Book of Common Prayer. Mass in the PIC has been said in Spanish since the earliest days of its independence, but it is also said in Tagalog. Visiting other churches while traveling abroad, Aglipay developed his theology, coming to reject the divinity of Jesus and the concept of the Trinity and becoming theologically Unitarian. Other PIC officials refused to accept this revised theology. Aglipay's Unitarian and progressive theological ideas were evident in his novena, Pagsisayum sa Birhen sa Balintawa, 1925, and its English translation, Novenary of the Motherland, winning large numbers of adherents in its early years because of its nationalist roots. Aglipayan numbers decreased due to factionalism and doctrinal disagreements. The American government of occupation, after the Philippine-American War ended in July 1902, decided to return to the Catholic Church those parish buildings that had become Aglipayan during the Philippine Revolution, and this further limited church growth. There were tensions within the church from the beginning between Aglipay's liberal followers and more traditional members. Eventually there would be a schism. After Aglipay's death in 1940, the courts awarded the name and assets to the Trinitarian faction. Some factions formally joined other denominations including the Episcopal Church and the American Unitarians. In 1961, the Philippine Independent Church joined the Anglican Communion and its bishops were reconsecrated into the historic succession of the Anglican line. Present. Today, Aglipayans in the Philippines number at least 2 million members, with most from the northern part of Luzon, especially in the Ilocos region. Congregations are also found throughout the Philippine diaspora in North America, Europe, Middle East and Asia. The church is the second largest single Christian denomination in the country after the Roman Catholic Church, comprising about 2.6% of the total population of the Philippines. Most of the members of the church, like the founders Aglipay and los Reyes, are political activists, often involved in progressive groups and advocating nationalism, anti-imperialism, democracy, as well as opposing extrajudicial killings. They have often been victims of forced disappearances and been branded as leftists by the government for being aligned with progressive groups. Specifically after Obispo Maximo Ix Alberto Rumento was killed in 2006 for being an anti-government critic. Doctrine and practice. Priesthood. The Church believes in ordination both of priests and bishops, like many Anglican and Lutheran denominations, and unlike the Catholic Church, the Church ordains women. Since its establishment, the Church allows its priests to marry, rejecting mandatory clerical celibacy. Worship and liturgy. The main liturgy on Sunday is the Eucharist, which is said in the vernacular. The Church is non-committal regarding transubstantiation and real presence in the Eucharist. Church members are taught that the Eucharistic species, the bread and wine, remain only as symbols during the Holy Mass and do not change into the actual body and blood of Jesus Christ. Contraception. Aglipayan bishops joined public demonstrations in support of the Reproductive Health Bill, a law advocating for contraception and sex education that the Catholic Church and several other Christian denominations objected to on moral grounds. Executive Commission. The General Assembly is the highest governing body that meets every 3 years. The Executive Commission is mandated by the General Assembly to act on its behalf, when not in session, on matters ordinarily within its jurisdiction. The Executive Commission meets regularly during the ad interim period. The Obispo Maximo presides as ex officio chairperson of the Executive Commission. Other members include the chairperson of the National Lay Council, as ex officio vice chairperson, the General Secretary, as ex officio secretary, the chairpersons of the Commission on Programs and Projects and the Commission on Business and Finance. 5 bishops, elected elected by the Supreme Council of Bishops, 5 priests elected by the Council of Priests, and the 3 presidents of the national sectoral organizations of the men, women and youth of the Church. 2 other elected officers of the Church, the General Treasurer and General Auditor, are given permanent invitation by the Executive Commission to join during regular meetings. They are permitted to deliberate but not granted with the right to vote. Obispo Maximo, General Secretary, General Treasurer, Auditor General, Chairperson, Supreme Council of Bishops, Chairperson, North Central Luzon Bishops' Conference, Chairperson, South Central Luzon Bishops' Conference, Bishop Visayas Bishops' Conference, Bishop USA and Canada Conference, Chairperson, Council of Priests, Governor General National Priests Organization, Representative COP Visayas, Representative COP North Central Luzon, Representative COP Mindanao, Chairperson, National Lay Council, National President, Layman of the Iglesia Filipina Independiente, National President, Women of the Philippine Independent Church, National President, Youth of the Iglesia Filipina Independiente, Chairperson, Commission on Business and Finance, Chairperson, Commission on Programs and Projects, Organization. The Church has 40 dioceses, including the Diocese of the Eastern and Western United States and Canada. However, a lack of priests means that many parishes in the United States must depend on lay leaders. The Church is led by the Obispo Maximo, a supreme bishop, similar to a presiding bishop in other denominations. The current Obispo Maximo is the Most Rev. Ephraim Fahutagana y Cervantes, who was elected on May 10, 2011. The Supreme Council of Bishops consists of all serving and retired bishops. Its main tasks include maintaining and defining doctrinal orthodoxy, the adoption and prescription of liturgy, and the overall pastoral and moral guidance to the faithful. There are also regional episcopal conferences: North Central Luzon Bishops' Conference, South Central Luzon Bishops' Conference, Visayas Bishops' Conference, and Mindanao Bishops' Conference. The Council of Priests is the group of delegates to the General Assembly that are entirely priests. It elects a chairperson, a vice-chairperson and a secretary that have each terms of 3 years. The Council of Priests promotes the welfare of the clergy and represents the concerns to the General Assembly. The National Lay Council is composed of the men, women and youth delegates of every diocese represented in the General Assembly. It works to promote and enhance the participation of the laity in the governance and general affairs of the Church. There are also several sectoral groups, such as the Women of the Philippine Independent Church, Youth of the Iglesia Filipina Independiente, and Laymen of the Iglesia Filipina Independiente. General Assembly. The Iglesia Filipina Independiente has a strong tradition of authority belonging to the entire people of God. This conciliar nature of authority in the Church is expressed in the General Assembly, where the clergy and laity are both represented. The Iglesia Filipina Independiente is a church that is governed synodically. It has the General Assembly as the highest governing and policy-making body that regularly convenes every 3 years. It consists of all bishops, 2 priests in active duty, and 3 delegates representing the men, women, and youth from every diocese elected in a convention, as provided in Sections 1 and 2, Article 2, of its Constitution. The General Assembly operates as a synod through which the ordained and non-ordained share the responsibility of witnessing to the apostolic faith. By virtue of the common baptism, it serves as the governing body of the Church in fulfilling the mission entrusted by God, in safeguarding the unity and continuity of the apostolic faith, and in guiding the faithful in the fulfillment of the baptismal covenant. It is thus the final authority in all matters affecting the life, order and discipline of the Church. In the spirit of consultation, the General Assembly tackles complex and contentious issues and matters that touch on the institutional components of the Church that have to do with governance, policies, and programs. On the whole, the General Assembly receives the address of the Obispo Maximo, acts upon the decisions of the Executive Commission, receives report of the General Treasurer, receives reports of the Commission on Business and Finance and the Commission on Programs and Projects, receives reports of the Supreme Council of Bishops, Council of Priests and National Lay Council, approved the program of the Church, approved the triennial budget, elects the Executive Commission and the national officers of the Standing Commission. There are 6 commissions that promote the enduring concerns in the various aspects of the life of the Church, with each composed of people with expertise in the particular areas. The commissions are primarily recommendatory in nature in terms of formulation of policies, which are subject to the final approval of the Executive Commission and the General Assembly of the Church. Commission on Business and Finance, Commission on Programs and Projects, Commission on Education and Ministry, Commission on Liturgy and Music, Commission on Mission and Evangelism, Commission on Ecumenical Relations and International Affairs. Councils. The Church has 3 important councils that are represented in the General Assembly. These are the Supreme Council of Bishops, the Council of Priests and the National Lay Council. These play important leadership roles in setting the direction of the Church and in pursuing institutional development for the work of mission. Supreme Council of Bishops. The Supreme Council of Bishops, which consists of all serving and retired bishops, defines the doctrines of the Church, adopts and prescribes official liturgical rites, and gives pastoral and moral guidance to the faithful. Council of Priests. The Council of Priests is composed of all priest delegates to the General Assembly. It elects a chairperson, a vice-chairperson and a secretary for an office of 3 years. The Council of Priests promotes the welfare of priests and represents the concerns to the General Assembly. National Lay Council. The National Lay Council is composed of the men, women and youth delegates of every diocese represented in the General Assembly. It works to promote and enhance the participation of the laity in the governance and general affairs of the Church. Lay organizations. There are 3 sectoral organizations of the laity in the Church. These are the youth of the Iglesia Filipina Independiente, the women of the Philippine Independent Church and the laymen of the Iglesia Filipina Independiente. The sectoral organizations are each governed by the respective constitution and bylaws, have their own sets of elected officers, and are organized at the national, diocesan and parish levels. The youth, women, and men of the sectoral organizations are represented to the General Assembly through the National Lay Council. Notable churches. Owing to its roots in the Roman Catholic Church in the Philippines, the church buildings of the Philippine Independent Church do not differ significantly from Catholic Church buildings. Some of its notable churches are listed here. Cathedral of the Holy Child. The Cathedral of the Holy Child in Ermita, Manila is the national cathedral of the Philippine Independent Church, and the seat of the Obispo Maximo. Designed by architect Carlos Arguelles, construction of the church began in 1964 and was inaugurated on May 8, 1969, on the occasion of the 109th birth anniversary of its first Obispo Maximo, Gregorio Aglipay. The church is made largely of bare concrete and wood and has been noted for having a suspended block with sloping trapezoidal walls and textured, with horizontal grooves all throughout, suspended with a triangular block. Maria Clara Church. The Maria Clara Church in Santa Cruz, City of Manila, was originally built as a wooden structure in 1923 before it was expanded and becoming concrete structure in the 1950s, when the original cathedral of the Iglesia Filipina Independiente in Tondo was destroyed during World War II. The Maria Clara Church became the temporary office of the Obispo Maximo before relocating in 1969 to the present Cathedral of the Holy Child. It was the also home parish of Obispo Maximo IV Isabelo de los Reyes Jr., where he was ordained as a priest in 1923 and elected Supreme Bishop in 1946. Seminaries. The Aglipay Central Theological Seminary in Urdaneta City, Pangasinan is the regional seminary of the Church dedicated to serve the North Central and South Central Luzon dioceses. Acts offers a Bachelor of Theology and Divinity programs for those who aspire to enter the ordained ministry in the Church. It is a 4-year study program with a curriculum focused on biblical, theological, historical and pastoral studies with reference to parish management and development and wider cultural and social context. St. Paul's Theological Seminary is the regional seminary of the Church dedicated to serve the Visayas and Mindanao dioceses. St. Andrew's Theological Seminary is run by the Episcopal Church in the Philippines, but serves both the Church and the Iglesia Filipina Independiente. Churches in full communion. The Church is in full communion with many similar churches, including Old Catholic churches which are part of the Union of Utrecht, churches of the Anglican Communion, such as the Church of England, Episcopal Church in the Philippines and the Episcopal Church in the United States of America, and the Marthoma Syrian Church. The Aglipayan Church is not a member of the Union of Utrecht, by virtue of its concordat relations with the Anglican churches. The Philippine Independent Church is given the privilege to send delegates to the Council of Churches of East Asia as organized by the Anglican provinces in East Asia in 1962. Since 1964, IFI bishops have also been regular participants of the Lambeth conferences. The IFI also has a concordat with the Church of Sweden. Notable members: the Most Rev. Gregorio Aglipay Aglipayan, Obispo Maximo I, First Supreme Bishop of the Filipino Church, Vicar General of the Revolutionary Government, Don Isabelo de los Reyes, also known as Don Belong. Reyes was a prominent Filipino politician, writer, translator of the first Filipino-language Bible and labor activist in the 19th and 20th centuries. The founder of the IFI, he is often called the father of Filipino socialism for his writings and activism with labor unions. General Emilio Aguinaldo, first president of the Philippines, with his influence, together with other Cavitena revolutionary generals and officers, the IFI gained a sweeping stronghold in Cavite. His brother, Gen. Baldomero Aguinaldo, was the president of Comité de Caballeros of the Filipino Church in Cavite, while his youngest sister Felicidad, his wife Hilaria del Rosario, and his mother S.R.A. Trinidad Femi were officers of the Comisión de Damas of the Church. Apolinario Mabini, a Filipino political philosopher and revolutionary who wrote a constitutional plan for the First Philippine Republic, and served as its first prime minister in 1899. Melchor Aquino was a Filipino revolutionary who became known as Tandang Sora because of her age when the 1896 Philippine Revolution broke out. She gained the titles Grand Woman of the Revolution and Mother of Balin entire work for her contributions to the independence movement. She was among the Church's most prominent and devoted followers in Caloocan. Gen. Baldomero Aguinaldo, a revolutionary general and brother of Gen. Emilio Aguinaldo, elected president of the Comité de Caballeros of the IFI in Cavite, grandfather of Cesar Virata Lopez Santos, nationalist and playwright from Pandacan, Manila, introduced the now obsolete Abacad de Tagalog spelling reform in 1940. Aurelio Tolentino, prominent Pampanga writer, dramatist, and one of the founders of Katipunan, the foremost advocate of the establishment of the Filipino Church in Pampanga. Vicente Soto, dramatist, writer, journalist, foremost anti-friar, the fiery publisher, editor of Ang Suga and El Pueblo, and a prominent founder of the Filipino Church in Cebu. Mariano Marcos was a lawyer and a politician from Ilocos Norte, Philippines, a congressman from 1925 to 1931. He is best known for being the father of former President Ferdinand Marcos. Felipe Buencamino Sr., co-writer of the Constitution of the Philippine Republic at Malolos, Filipino composer, a co-founder of the IFI. Most Rev. Santiago Antonio Fonacio y Sagatan, Obispo Maximo II, Second Supreme Bishop, a writer known for translating Nolimi Tangera and El Filibusterismo into Ilocano. Most Rev. Solomon Gano y Flores, Obispo Maximo VII, 8th Supreme Bishop, successfully solicited funds to build the Cathedral of the Holy Child and became its first dean. Installed as Obispo Maximo in 1987, but died in office in 1989 of heart failure at the cathedral altar. Most Rev. Alberto Rumento y Baldovino, Obispo Maximo X, 9th Supreme Bishop, assassinated in 2007 for being a government critic and an active campaigner against human rights violations in the Philippines. Jose Garvey de Flores, patriot, prolific Ilocano writer and playwright from Bangui, Ilocos Norte, composed Filipinas na Daga Filipinas, which is sung during services of the IFI. Cesar Virata, the fourth Prime Minister of the Philippines from 1981 to 1986 under the interim Bat of Sang Pambansa and the regular Bat of Sang Pambansa, one of the Philippines' business leaders and leading technocrats. He served as finance minister from 1970 during the Marcos regime and also through election became prime minister in 1981. He concurrently was finance minister throughout the 80s. He is the grandnephew of the first Philippine president, Emilio Aguinaldo. Wahida Crispin Beltran, the grand old man of Philippine labor, was a Filipino politician and labor leader, a staunch critic of Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. His imprisonment in 2006 and 2007 on disputed charges of rebellion and sedition drew international attention. As a member of 13th Congress of the Philippines with the Anak Palasa, the Toiling Masses Party list, and former chair of Kilusang Mayo Uno, he was a major figure in contemporary Filipino history. Died when he fell while repairing the roof of his house. Bayani Fernando, a former chairman of the Metropolitan Manila Development Authority. Calixto Zaldivar, former representative, Lone District of Antique, former governor of Antique and former associate justice of the Supreme Court. Former president of the National Lulay Organization of the IFI. Enrique A. Zaldivar, son of Justice Zaldivar, former governor of Antique, and former ambassador to Brunei. Salvacion Z. Perez, former governor of Antique, daughter of Justice Zaldivar. Gedeon G. Quijano, former governor of Misamis Occidental, son of IFI Bishop Juan P. Quijano. President Ferdinand Marcos, 10th President of the Philippines. born in the IFI, but converted to Roman Catholicism. Ferdinand Topiccio, lawyer, born in the IFI, but converted to Iglesia Ni Cristo. Marian Rivera, model and actress, known for her roles in Marimar, Diasbal, Donna, and Amaya. Also known as the primetime queen of GMA Network, converted to Roman Catholicism on September 8, 2014 prior to her wedding to primetime king of GMA Network, Ding Dong Dantes on December 30, 2014. Emily Nyan Alipay, representative DIWA party list. Eduardo Firmalo, incumbent governor of Romblon. Dio Macalma, DZRH broadcaster, mayor of Star City. Guardia Patrigi Quijano, WOPIC president. Ladislao Bonus, was a composer, conductor, contrabass player, and teacher in Pandacan, Manila. Considered as father of the Filipino opera. Andrea Rosal, daughter of NPA spokesperson Gregorio Roger Rosal.